The subject of extraterrestrials has mystified humanity for countless generations. The question of, are we alone in the universe, has inspired us to push forward and advance as a species in the search for life in the great beyond. But to this day, judging by the way people generally treat the subject, it would appear that we have yet to make any form of substantial contact. Yet, the awareness of a deeper truth, that something is being hidden from us, is regularly being leaked to this day. Let's start with some basics, which would be UFOs, which we all know stands for Unidentified Flying Objects, or as they're starting to be called today, UAVs, Unidentified Aerial Vehicles. It was shortly after the 2 atomic bombs went off during World War II that UFO sightings spiked around the world. Hundreds of reports of UFOs began to emerge in the decade that followed the incident, and it was in 1947 in Roswell, New Mexico that things got really interesting. Reports of a UFO crash landing in the shape of a flying disc inspired tremendous interest in possible alien activity as the US military quickly quarantined and cleaned up the site, claiming it was simply a weather balloon. This was really the beginning, and today, thanks to modern technology, especially cell phones, we have access to thousands, if not tens of thousands of seemingly unexplainable UFO sightings from around the world. My own personal favorite is the Dome of the Rock incident from 2011, where several independent people caught footage of a bright, glowing, and oscillating orb that descended over the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem. After hovering over the sacred temple for several moments, it shot upwards with tremendous speed, disappearing into the sky. In more recent times, a video that was leaked several years ago was released by none other than the Pentagon, featuring 3 separate accounts of US military pilots attempting to track and follow incredibly fast-moving aerial ships, without any clue as to what they were. Along with curious phenomena like these, we also have a long list of ex-military officials who have either claimed to have seen or even had some level of interaction with these crafts, identifying that not only are they real, but they have no idea what they are. One particular interesting subject in this discussion is the work of Robert Dean, a retired command sergeant major who, after that job, became a ufologist and had been very public about his experiences with UFOs and ETs up until his passing away in 2018. At one point, he gave a presentation, the full thing of which you can find available on YouTube, accounting many of the things that he saw in the military and NASA. The most interesting of which being the story of what happened during the real moon landing. Now, many people today believe that the moon landing itself is a conspiracy, that it was faked because of certain things that stand out about the moon landing that don't make sense, such as why the crosshairs of a camera are appearing behind a particular object on the screen, or the strange objects in the reflection of the astronaut's visor. But what Robert Dean has described was that there was actually a real moon landing, but what happened was that upon arriving at the moon, what the astronauts found was that it was populated. There were, according to him, little alien people walking all over the place, ships flying through the, well, I'd call it air, but I guess they don't have oxygen up there, do they? This was such a shock to the astronauts that after their visit, they returned back with 40 rolls of film of what they saw, and NASA supposedly destroyed it. The thinking seems to be that the revelation of this truth was so out there that NASA buried the truth because of what would happen to the world if this was to get out. Now, I'm not saying that I'm in support of hiding the truth, but at the same time, think of how many religious beliefs would be shattered from this truth. How much chaos would be caused if all of a sudden, our entire global paradigm was to change in an instant. Again, I'm not saying that they're destroying the footage, if it did happen, was a good thing, but at the very least, trying to see things from every perspective. Specifically, there was an ex-CIA operative who spoke with AJ Plus at one point, and she described that the single most important thing that she learned from her time as basically a spy was that everyone believes they are the good guy. So even if this event did happen, whoever it is at NASA who controlled all of the information probably did it believing they were doing the right thing. We will return to Robert Dean at another point soon because he shared something else that was very interesting. However, first we have to discuss this. You may be familiar with a man named Bob Lazar, one of, if not the first, to come forward with inside leaks about the secret government UFO programs. He claimed to have been hired in the late 1980s to reverse engineer purported extraterrestrial technology at what he described was a secret site called S4, a site similar to, and rather close to, Area 51. He described that he had access to a recovered UFO ship and for several years was attempting to discover the secrets of how it worked. Lazar claimed that the propulsion of the studied vehicle was fueled by the chemical element with the atomic number 115, known today as moscovium, or E115, which at the time was named unumpentium, since it hadn't been created yet. However, it was first synthesized in 2003 by a joint team of Russian and American scientists for real. He said that the propulsion system relied on a stable isotope of E115, which supposedly generated a gravity wave after being excited by livermorium, element 116, during proton bombardment. He argued that the decay products brought about by the reaction between the two elements would include gravitons, a hypothetical quantum particle that is thought to be responsible for gravity. In his new Netflix documentary, he used the analogy that the craft is kind of like a bowling ball. If you were to put a ball onto a piece of fabric or your bed sheet and then proceeded to push down on the areas around it, the bowling ball would fall forward into the bends and gaps that you create around it. In this way, the craft would kind of just fall through space by distorting space-time around it, like in a continuous rolling motion. This is what allowed the vehicle to fly and to evade visual detection by bending light around it. He said it levitated silently, and when it was activated, he was unable to even put his hand on it because the force would repel his hand away like a strong gravitational field. According to intel that he received while at S4, the ship, which was one of 9 that the military had access to, was originally from the twin binary star system called Zeta Reticuli and had belonged to the Greys, which are the most common visual of aliens that we generally see today when you think of what an alien might look like. We even have an emoji for it. He also explained that the way that the military worked was so secretive that they wouldn't even let the various divisions studying the craft to communicate with each other, so progress on reverse engineering the technology was very slow. While one group would be working on controls, another on propulsion, and another on, well, you get the picture. But due to this isolation, they wouldn't easily be able to identify how the different parts of the ship were interconnected and worked together, and thus reverse engineering became very difficult. This was especially challenging because supposedly the ship was entirely interconnected. There weren't really any moving parts. It seemed to be one singular solid object. The seat and floor and panels and walls were all one singular material, with no sharp edges anywhere, an entirely different kind of machine than anything we're used to today. Now, after Lazar came out publicly about this, his life fell apart. Many people quickly looked into his life and found that he seemingly never had any of the education degrees that he claimed to have had. Yet, upon deeper investigation, documents stored away in his old university proved that he was telling the truth. Bob explained that after he came out publicly, he received a phone call from his ex-employers who said, "Do you have any idea what we're going to do to you now that you've done this?" And for many years, Bob suffered as much of his past was erased, and he was made to look like a fool in front of the masses. Now, Bob's story is a very interesting one. My highest recommendation is checking out the documentary he created with Jeremy Corbell called Bob Lazar, Area 51 and Flying Saucers, as well as the Joe Rogan podcast that they appeared on, where Bob goes deep into the story of what happened and what he learned. But Bob isn't the only one to come forward with some fascinating stories, and this brings us to Dr. Stephen Greer, who founded the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence, or CSETI, in 1990 to create a diplomatic and research-based initiative to contact extraterrestrial civilizations, along with the Disclosure Project in 1993, a research project devoted to disclosing to the public information that the government and military supposedly have had regarding the existence of UFOs and ETs. The organization claims to have over 3,000 confirmed reports of UFO sightings by pilots and over 4,000 proofs of what they describe as landing traces, evidence of UFOs landing on the Earth and leaving behind a sort of electromagnetic signature. If we pair this with what Bob Lazar said, it's entirely possible these ships could be bending light, entirely invisible to us, though perhaps not high-level military scanners. Dr. Greer also appeared on the Joe Rogan podcast many years ago and explained some very interesting things. What he received from a collection of over 30 documents from the NRO, NSA, CIA, FBI, and presidential briefings was that the way that these ships work and the way these ETs understand the universe is leagues beyond our own. What he described was that while today we believe that light is the fastest thing in the universe, this is only a barrier, and on the other side of the speed of light are laws that are governed by some sort of super consciousness, and that it is from this higher awareness that interdimensional travel becomes possible, and you can move throughout the universe nearly instantaneously without worrying about the speed of light, which is simply too slow to travel at if you're going from solar system to solar system, or especially across the galaxy, or even between galaxies. This is incredibly important to us because it's relative to the idea that consciousness and conscious thought actively steers the field of reality that creates the experiences that we have. This is a subject we will return to shortly. However, this conversation has one massive implication. You see, one thing that Dr. Greer explained was that the significance of alien life to us isn't really all about ETs at all, but about technology. The very instant that it became available would completely transform life on Earth forever. Imagine suddenly being able to travel to distant planets or explore the universe, and forget about having power to fuel the entire world's energy requirements forever. You'd have enough power to blow up a planet if you wanted to. This has tremendous implications to it, and may even be part of the reasoning for keeping the technology hidden for now. The question arises, is this technology hidden so that only the secret rulers of the world can have it? Or is it because humanity is not yet ready to inherit such a gift? One final piece in the ET and UFO conspiracy is the concept of the hoaxed alien attack. This comes from the late Dr. Wernher von Braun, the top Nazi scientist of Hitler's army, who, after World War II, came to the United States to work for the US government. Funny how that happens. And on his deathbed, he theorized that after a war with the Middle East, one day there would be a hoaxed alien attack, which was a part of the secret plan to weaponize space and control the world. He actually urged Dr. Rosen, his secretary, to thwart this plan above all else, because if it were to come to pass, and space was weaponized, whoever controlled these powers would have complete and supreme control over everyone, and the world would fall under the complete control of the oppressors. Now, the subject of ETs does not end there, however, because there is also the reptilian conspiracy, most famously brought to the public attention by the British conspiracy theorist David Icke. It's become one of the most infamous and popular conspiracy theories ever, sparking numerous parodies and commentaries in the media and TV shows. To put it simply, Icke believes that an interdimensional race of reptilian entities known as aLIEns have hijacked the Earth and are stopping humanity from realizing our true potential. He has argued that these aLIEns are the same beings mentioned in many Gnostic texts that have identified themselves as demons and rulers of the 7 planets in various traditions, mostly having the ultimate goal of preventing souls from leaving the material realm. He claims that because of this, they have gone by many names throughout history, including the Anunnaki from Sumerian myth and the Watchers and Nephilim from the Book of Enoch. He argues that human sacrifice to the gods in the ancient world was actually for the reptilians' benefit, especially the sacrifice of children, because he tells us that at the moment of death by sacrifice, a form of adrenaline surges through the body, accumulating at the base of the brain, and is apparently more potent in children, something that is today reminiscent of adrenochrome. Bringing it more into the modern day, he claims that a genetically modified human Archon hybrid race of shape-shifting reptilians, known as the Babylonian Brotherhood, or the Illuminati or Freemasons to us today, manipulate global events to keep humans in constant fear, so that the Archons can feed off of the negative energy that this creates. Now, he has also claimed that the members of this secret elite are descended from reptilians coming from the Draco constellation. He stated that the reptilians come not only from another planet, but also another dimension, the lower level of the fourth dimension, which he calls the astral plane, the one nearest to the physical world. As of 2003, when his books originally brought this theory out, he said that the reptilian bloodlines include all American presidents, 3 British and 2 Canadian prime ministers, several Sumerian kings and Egyptian pharaohs, and a whole bunch of celebrities. Remember when that article went viral about how Justin Bieber supposedly turned into a giant reptile in front of everyone? Some of the most prominent bloodlines are said to include the Rockefellers, Rothschilds, various wealthy European families, and established families of the eastern United States, and the British royal family. In fact, he said in numerous interviews that he saw former British Prime Minister Ted Heath's eyes turn entirely jet black while the two men waited for a Sky News interview in 1989. Ultimately, the global elite make up the top of the pyramid for the reptilians in modern day, all with the intention to keep us sedated and trapped in this reality without gaining a higher knowledge. At the top of the global elite are what Ike has referred to as the prison wardens, who oversee us in what is, to them, just a prison world. Along with the New World Order, their main goal is apparently to create a microchipped population, a one-world government, and a global Orwellian fascist state, a brave new world, which he claims will be a post-truth era where freedom of speech is denied. And how are they planning to do this, you might ask? Well, if Ike is to be believed, then the Brotherhood either created or controls everything. Things like the United Nations, the International Monetary Fund, Round Table, the Council on Foreign Relations, Chatham House, the Club of Rome, the Royal Institute of International Affairs, the Trilateral Commission, and the Bilderberg Group, as well as the media, military, CIA, MI6, Mossad, scientific publications, most religious doctrine, and even the internet. In other words, they control every aspect of our society and can make us believe what they want, when they want. Before we move on, I think it's important that we now revisit Bob Dean and a particularly interesting story that he shared during the European Exopolitics Summit in 2009. He described that he was attending his son's retirement ceremony from the US Navy in Washington, D.C., and at this event, there were a great deal of active and retired generals, admirals, captains, and more. One particular retired Navy scientist approached him and said, "Hey, I know you. You're that retired command sergeant major who has opened up about the UFOs. I have a story for you, that my last government job was as a plasma fusion physicist at a top secret place outside of Las Vegas, and I was working there for 5 years with 2 guys who were not from here. They were from somewhere else, delightful people supporting us in figuring out plasma fusion, which equates to infinite energy forever." The man said, "After a few years of working with these guys, I approached one of them and asked, 'Okay, what do you really think of us, humans, as a species?' And the alien said, 'Well, since you've asked, we think you are a primitive, savage, and dangerous race.' The other alien who was listening in then leaned in and said, 'And you also smell bad.' And he explained that it's not really about our bodies, although yes, we have polluted our bodies and the earth to a wild extent, but that we also have a psychic odor about us. Our thoughts and feelings are so negative that other higher species find it terribly offensive." While this story is actually kind of funny, it's also something that we should take very seriously. According to the reports and expressions from many whistleblowers, the other species who are interacting with us are actually mostly benevolent, and if we can really listen to what they have to say and do some meaningful self-reflection, it may just help us to clear out our own negativity, release ourselves from any reptilian or other controlling influences, and put us into a position to meet some really cool otherworldly species. Know your customer. It's the de facto business mantra of our modern era. Collect enough information on everyone's web browsing and social media habits, listen to what they talk about when they believe they're alone, and feed the data into a network of computers so complex that computer scientists aren't even sure how it works at all anymore. This complex neural network of computers, data, and programs are then linked to nearly all of us through the apps and web services that we use on a daily basis, spitting out products, content, and suggestions catered to individual desires better than anything that has ever been done before, keeping the masses glued and engaged on their phones, tablets, and desktops like nobody's business, and have been specifically designed to manipulate our thoughts and feelings in order to keep us using the apps longer, get our friends and family engaging, and spend more money in the process. This is our current reality. And what's more interesting, the business model is wildly successful and most people don't even know that they're a part of it. Where does humanity go from here? A cyberpunk dystopia? As technology continues to advance, there is concern growing in the minds of those who have freed themselves from the Matrix long enough to realize that there is an issue. As technology continues to evolve and humans become more integrated with it, the line seems to blur between what is real and what is not. Then again, if all of reality is an illusion anyways, does it even matter? Let us begin our exploration with the software that currently exists today that begins to blur the lines between reality and illusion. Deepfakes. Technology is just now reaching a point where we can produce videos of just about anyone saying or doing things that they otherwise wouldn't say.
President Trump is a total and complete dipshit.
Granted, this technology is still in its infancy, and while that clip itself can easily be identified as a fake, every day as it improves, it becomes more and more difficult to tell the difference between deepfake and reality. Even today, it's being used in nefarious ways, including making porn videos of celebrities by taking their faces and applying them to other bodies. As time goes on, we may exist in a world where across the internet could exist countless videos of famous people, celebrities, politicians, all saying things that they would never otherwise say. And what happens when it gets so good that nobody can tell the difference? The real and fake versions arguing over which one is authentic. But of course, this is only the beginning of our technological conspiracies and how we slowly lose touch with our world as we enter into new ones. One of the biggest growing concerns in the world is the belief that the powers that be are attempting to control everyone through advanced microchip technology. For while each of our mobile devices already track and monitor us, the microchips could be used to monitor and potentially even manipulate thoughts and emotions on a mass level, just like Facebook and Google are already doing today. The powers that be wouldn't just be watching you on the outside, they'd be able to monitor everything inside, everything about you, down to what you think about. This technology, combined with an AI that can associate complex combinations of states within your physiology, predicting future behaviors and affecting our perception and decision-making processes, a very scary and possible reality becomes available to us. One where we integrate with technology. As we know, this is already happening on some level right now, with the algorithms actively recording everything you search and serving it back to you on a silver platter. This, however, would be a far more invasive integration, and what's even crazier to consider is that people would do it voluntarily. You see, very few people are going to just allow this technology to be embedded in their bodies just so that the government can monitor them. Rather, just like with cell phones today, the microchip will be a no-brainer for people who are willing to receive the benefits of this tech. And the exchange? Intimate access to your personal information. Everything you see, think, feel, touch, taste, and so on. But what kind of benefits would there be? Well, at the earliest level, which Elon Musk has already announced with Neuralink, is that by connecting a very few tiny wires directly into your brain, they could theoretically overwrite neural patterns of depression, anxiety, and even help heal spinal problems, among other things. But in the grand scheme of things, and with a great deal of innovation, where this technology seems to go is into the realm of having a sort of telepathic link to the internet. When you have a question, instead of pulling out your phone and searching for the answers on the internet, You can access all of the information instantaneously about anything that you want. For others with the implant, you may find yourself connecting to others in a pseudo-telepathic kind of way, where your thoughts and feelings could be personally shared with others in real time, communicating beyond words, but with a language of images, pictures, and even sharing experiences. This would allow you to connect with others both mentally and empathically as well, which could bring people closer together. This would fundamentally change the education system too, for who needs school when you have instant access to every bit of information known to mankind right there in your mind? This chip could theoretically support you in downloading information thousands, if not millions of times faster than reading or watching documentaries. Much like Neo in the Matrix, downloading a lifetime worth of fighting techniques and becoming a kung fu master in a single day, this level of integration could be possible with this kind of technology. Imagine if you wanted to become an amazing artist or learn everything there is to learn about programming, quantum mechanics, or even becoming a professional accountant or lawyer. So why not just spend an afternoon or evening downloading and installing courses directly into your mind? You could theoretically condense 6 years of intense university studies into a weekend and have the exact same level of knowledge, or even greater knowledge, compared to someone who took the time to learn it the old-fashioned way. And as more and more people integrate with technology, it may even lead to a collective hive mind, where everyone's own brains become processors for a collective consciousness shared amongst all integrated people. On the one hand, it's very much like the Borg from Star Trek, but on the other hand, it seems to relate with many ancient writings, such as the Hermetic texts, as well as ideas that people like Stephen Greer have put forward. The idea that there is only one consciousness, and while all of our bodies appear separate and perceive disconnection from one another, ultimately, we're all sharing the same consciousness within the source field. The advent of this kind of technology would have earth-shattering implications for all of us, and life would never be the same. A sense of personal boundaries and privacy disappears as we become more open and interconnected in mind and body. But again, as wonderful as some of these ideas sound, the conspiracy remains. Who programmed the AI that links into our minds? And much like Facebook and Google operating today, would this mental tech dissolve our personalities, losing our individuality and making us more like robots? When all of us are connected in this kind of way, the lines of reality blur further, and we are called to ask, who are we, really? Yet the microchip technology is really only the beginning for how we might connect through tech, because where things could go are directly into the realms of something straight out of a sci-fi movie. Let us start with some rather inconspicuous innovations that could change the landscape of the world in a massive way. Perhaps one day, let's say scientists and engineers complete a prototype for an artificial eye for blind people. One simple surgery, and it's a miracle. People who have been blind their whole lives suddenly have the gift of sight. But it won't stop there though. Suddenly these people can see wavelengths of light that normal eyes can't, have an integrated zoom feature giving them binocular eyes, and even have an augmented reality display directly in their inner vision. These people could literally play Pokemon Go anywhere without a phone, literally seeing Pokemon all over the place. When cyborgs can not only see, but see better than someone with normal eyes, even people with fine eyesight will want this upgrade, and a new generation of upgraded humans begins. Even on a less invasive level, we have the ideas like the digital contact lens depicted in the new Brave New World series, which is a contact that hooks into receptors in the back of your eye, giving you a direct mental and visual link to everyone else in society. This could happen with prosthetics too, and in a way it already is, although the tech is still in its infancy. If someone loses or breaks their legs or arms in a terrible accident, they can one day get bionic limbs that are more powerful and capable than any normal body part, giving them super strength or super speed, at least up to the limits of what the rest of the biological body can handle. When this tech is available, of course, some people will opt to have their arms or legs replaced by bionic body parts. This may even be especially popular in top-secret super soldier experiments done by militaries of the world, if they're not already doing it. Ideas like this have also been made popular in pop culture, such as with the cyborg in Treasure Planet, or Ed Elric from Full Metal Alchemist. But speaking now to integrated experiences, let us shift our focus for a moment to consider VR. It's not impossible to think that something like the Oasis from Ready Player One could be right around our doorstep, a massive multiplayer online universe that puts you into the experience through VR technology. This could, and likely would, lead to a form of mass exodus from real life, as people begin shifting their lives into this digital realm. Why go to work in an office when you can work from any conceivable place in the universe? And then instead of spending time with friends at the bar after work, why not go hunting dragons together? Instead of playing racing games on your iPad, why not go and actually experience a race yourself? Completely immersive, yet safe from the comfort of your home. With all of the suffering in the world and the fantastic possibilities offered by VR, some people might seek out a life spent mostly or even totally in-game. And while everyone is inside of the game, what would happen to the real world? If we are not careful, we may end up with a reality like Ready Player One, with massive slums taking over as people spend less and less time in the physical dimension. Why bother fixing the real world when the in-game world is always perfect, beautiful, or at least exactly as it's designed to be? But even this is not the end, and the lines around what is real begins to blur until you can't even see the line anymore. One day, it may even become possible to transport your entire consciousness into a game. This concept was demonstrated powerfully by a show called Sword Art Online, in which a VR headset allowed individuals to leave their body behind as they enter into an entirely virtual reality. Your body is unconscious, you're not even aware of it, and you experience reality as if you are physically running around in Azeroth or Minecraft, Hyrule, or literally anywhere that you want, as anyone that you want. Recently, this idea was also portrayed in an episode of Black Mirror, with a next-level VR headset that is just a little disc that you put on the side of your head, and it transports your consciousness into a video game. As you enter into a world where you can literally do anything, like fly, use magic, go on epic quests, or even just spend an entire summer fishing by a beautiful lake in paradise, the question becomes, why spend any time in the physical world at all? Do you want to have a super powerful body? Or a super sexy one? How do you want your face to look? You can customize it to your liking freely. Since this technology would connect directly to your brain, it could even stimulate sensations like getting drunk, taking psychedelics, or rewiring your thinking patterns to be however you want. If the only concern of having to unplug is eating and going to the bathroom, then undoubtedly someone will create a technology that makes it so that that isn't even an issue, and you will truly never have to leave. One might also wonder exactly what would happen to your physical body if you were to rewire your consciousness and brain inside of the game world. Would it change your body appearance at all? A mass exodus from the physical world would create tremendous changes within humanity, as part of the human race strives to live in this new world, and another part rebels against it, or simply cannot afford to play the game. Further, once brain integration happens and mass data is collected on people's reactions to certain stimuli or events, the artificial intelligence could skillfully filter and alter your perception in reality, or completely guide your experience in VR so that you rarely, if ever, have a desire to stop using it. All this technology, especially putting your consciousness into a game, will at some point give the game creators an awareness of everything about you, your thoughts, your feelings, your choices, and it would allow anyone with the know-how to monitor you on a very intimate level. And yet, most people will probably skip past the 50 to 100 pages of terms of service and press accept anyways, because the ability to shoot fireballs and fly is waiting for them on the other side of the sign-up page. And seeing the pinnacle of all of this together, as humanity grows and becomes more advanced and can even create an entirely robot body, if we can transfer our consciousness, our thoughts and memories into a machine, then we could exist with a robot body just like Ultron himself. When that day comes, we will be forced to ask, what constitutes a human being? Now, to some people, this already sounds amazing and can't wait for the future. However, the conspiratorial aspect of this comes in the form of a question. As we step into the next 100 years of change and beyond, who is really running the show? The foundation of the internet as we know it is rooted in algorithms beyond anyone's understanding, designed almost entirely for the purpose of profit and marketing. Who controls these algorithms? Who dictates what we see? Currently, our attention is essentially open to the highest bidder. But is it possible that the AI itself could take us all over? And if we are integrated into this collective mind, is it possible for someone to simply decide what we think and feel? Even when the internet was in its infant stages, people were fantasizing about free and open access to information revolutionizing the world. And while that tech did become available, social media has also come to the forefront and allowed some of our worst primal instincts like tribalism and manipulation to resurface with greater strength than ever before. To go deeper into this, we must acknowledge that we're all responsible for our own behavior. But as far as social media is concerned, how we use this technology is also beholden to those who created it. In a recent Netflix documentary called The Social Dilemma, several ex-employees of many social media tech giants like Google, Facebook, Instagram, and more sat down to reveal what they had inadvertently created with this pioneering technology: a monster. They explained that they have created a world in which billions of lives are affected by the decisions of a small number of programmers, a social reality in which, through the way that the apps and software work, it facilitates very small and subtle changes in the way that people think and feel. It's so subtle that you don't even know it's happening, but the result is that most of us end up living inside of a delusional bubble, seeing only the content that we're already exposed to seeing. And this software can even help us create negative responses to people who believe anything different than us. The technologies, they explained, are designed specifically to get as much engagement out of you as possible, to get you spending more and more time and then more money just by browsing these social media sites. Really take a moment to think about that. Every single thing that comes up on your own social media feed was put there by an algorithm that was trying to get you to keep scrolling, to warm you up to spending money with an ad, or continue to foster engagement by connecting with other people and bringing them back to the app too. A supposedly leaked document from a marketing presentation for video games showed dozens of pages, plans, and methods to use AI and data collection on the target gamer to determine when they were more likely to buy in-game items, and aggressively market to them by displaying offers at those times. Audio captured by the devices revealed to the AI the gender and mood of the player, and found that Wi-Fi signals could reveal their location, such as if the player is in the car or in their bedroom laying down. The AI would also pick up mouse movements and typing speed, revealing levels of engagement, determining how best to serve these ads to the individuals. All of this data is fed into the AI and analyzed by the marketing team to exploit human psychology for the sake of selling virtual goods. The presentation goes as far as using voice tone analysis to determine when players are slightly, moderately, and severely depressed, and then reduces the use of emotion-based advertisements and switches to logic-based advertisements, which were shown to be more effective in a depression. You can imagine what other tactics they might be using, and combined with their ability to manipulate the game to influence your state once you purchase more from their store, well, we weren't kidding when we said technology can be used to control us. Even if this presentation was fake, everything mentioned in it is well within the demonstrated power of AI today, and if it hasn't been integrated yet, you better believe that someone is working towards it. One singular and perhaps most critical questions we can ask ourselves in relationship to this new technology is, what is truth? How do we define and collectively agree on truth? Specifically, if we live in a world where no matter what you believe, you can always find support or evidence for the argument and perspectives that you hold. Want to believe the earth is flat, round, or hollow? You can find ample evidence for all three. Are you left-wing, right-wing, extreme center? It doesn't matter. On the internet, these ways of thinking are both the greatest and most logical and perfect way of thinking, and the most destructive way of thinking that is destroying our beautiful planet, all at the same time, depending on who you ask. Thus, the question of truth becomes a pertinent one. How do we, collectively as a species, find truth together? This is a question that we will revisit further down our path. Regarding the modern news and entertainment industry, we already know that the masses are manipulated daily to think and feel and respond in certain ways. And with the insights offered in the social dilemma, it seems as though our social media is also encouraging us to begin behaving in hive mind mentality. This technology appears to cause us to stop becoming unique individuals and become just a cog in a massive machine. And this is where there's a pending issue with the integration of technology. What's to stop the AI from changing the nature of your being based on who's advertising to you in any given day on a deeper level than ever before? In the world today, as people have negative responses to news or events, this fuels more negativity around the issue. Not to mention, the news actively fuels more negative press and stories on a daily basis, so that even if there's a lot of good in the world, the negative stories always seem to get more attention. Conspiratorially speaking, there is more and more evidence that shows that consciousness actively steers reality, that our focus and what we focus on dictates what kind of life we experience. People with hope for the world are driven to create things, but people who focus on all the negative stuff in their life generally have more anxiety around things that happen and become stuck in their own fear. The coronavirus pandemic was a great example of this, as we saw mass divisions from people wearing face masks and generally being scared of potentially spreading this thing, and those who just relaxed into the quarantine and said, all right, we're here, and I'm going to use this as an opportunity to create some meaningful change, at least in my own life. And they did. If Facebook and Google are steering the mainstream narrative, then they ultimately have a massive influence in the direction that society goes. They could design their systems to create peace and prosperity in the world, but their core focus is profit, which is good for business. So why would they change their business model? This couldn't have been made more evident by a personal quote from Mark Zuckerberg, founder of Facebook, who actually said, "What's good for the world isn't necessarily what's good for Facebook." Yes, he really said that, and he owns one of the largest companies in the world, influencing the lives of billions. Even if humanity was connected digitally with all of this access to information, such as consciousness integration and all that, unless you were actively looking to download and install books and wisdom into your mind, it's all too likely that the focus of our collective mind could be hijacked by advertisements, entertainment, or other things. The exact same as how we are constantly distracted by social media today, and this could even be used to steer our species in the direction of whoever or whatever was pulling the strings. At this point, it almost appears as though this kind of technological integration is inevitable, and if you're conflicted about it, you're not alone. On the one hand, the ability to read every book you ever wanted to in days, or learn more about yourself and the universe in such a short time, or master kung fu, is very appealing. On the other hand, if your mind can be controlled or even forcefully steered in any direction by someone else, then is that really a paradigm that we want to be a part of? I imagine that there will be some big turning points for our species in the journey of development of this technology. But if we can learn to do this in an open source way that allows each and every individual their own sovereign right to freedom of thought and feeling, and actually choose what they share with the collective mind, Well, I don't know. I'd be curious about the potential outcomes of this. The silver lining we have going into this is how the process mirrors what the internet of today brought us, good and bad. If we can learn from our mistakes and take that wisdom at a large scale into the new paradigm, we have hope. Even if its temptations still clutch the majority of people, a select few can guard the light and guide others into an enlightened cyberpunk reality. You can start practicing right now by being mindful of how your relationship with social media truly affects your life and the lives of those that it connects you with, and hopefully pass that wisdom on to future generations. If a great positive shift doesn't occur, we will forever be destined to repeat our mistakes on greater and greater scales until we finally do. As we've seen so far, humanity is undergoing an exponential increase in veils being lifted, and we are seeing life being stirred up and changed like never before. One analogy we might use here is as if humanity has been in the dark for so long, isolated by socioeconomic and cultural divides, and yet with modern technology, it would seem as though the lights are collectively turning on. But now, there is so much light, all at once, that it is blinding. And despite our access to so much information today, we are still just as blind as we ever were. That is, while we allow time for our eyes to adjust. Yet the root of revelation doesn't just speak to veils lifted, but our own revelation from divine origin. Belief systems and ideologies are challenged in mass as new information comes out that asks us to reassess our paradigms of identity. As this happens, those who are willing to explore new ideas grow, and those who rail against anything new only burrow deeper into their own existing paradigm. Even in the new world we are creating, there are bound to be different paradigms that people live within. We must remember that some people are filled with hate, negativity, and suffering, all of which are descending from their own pain, which inhibits their higher consciousness and keeps them rooted in a lower vibration. This does not mean that they are bad people, for the only true remedy is compassion. No matter how far disconnected from their soul someone may be, they can always come back to the light. However, the only way for this to take place is if they genuinely want to, for unless someone seeks their own salvation, they will never end up finding it. Thus, it doesn't matter if someone spends their time living in a VR reality for years, abuses their bodies, or even in some future reality travels throughout the universe. All paths through life can be taken, but only one path leads to the liberation of the soul. This is the path within. May this be a lesson for all of us too, for if we are afraid of the darkness within us and others, and we attempt to quell it by attacking it with anger and hate, then we lessen our own vibration and reduce ourselves to the same state of consciousness as that which we are fighting against. Evil begets evil, and in the words of a wise Jedi Master, fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, and hate leads to suffering. Hence, the true solution to the salvation of humanity, or the reconnection of our souls as we discussed so long ago, is through genuine and authentic compassion. By elevating our own consciousness to such a degree that our light radiates to those around us, and we become instruments of sacred transformative change by the goodness that we embody. And while this may sound to some like spiritual woo, the discoveries around this today have the power to radically change everything we think we know about both science and religion. These discoveries speak to a deeper, basic, and more intrinsic understanding about the nature of who we are and our place in the cosmos, as well as the abilities that we have and may inherit. Speaking to the nature of consciousness itself, these discoveries are so paradigm-shattering that life on Earth as we know it will never be the same once the knowledge becomes commonplace among the people of the Earth. That is, if it's ever allowed to get there. For a long time, our perception of spirituality has been governed by the religions of the world, and our perception of the universe and the nature of life has been governed by science. Movies like Zeitgeist outline and identify ways in which the religious institutions have monopolized people in a myriad of ways, while others today, such as Dr. Rupert Sheldrake's The Science Delusion, demonstrates how science has been used to shepherd people into a mindset, keeping us locked into a paradigm of physicality and nothing more. Further, these two voices of science and religion have been at odds for a very long time, sharply criticizing one another, or otherwise outright refusing to acknowledge each different perspective, or their many merits and wisdoms that they bring forth. Despite this, today new revelations about the nature of consciousness stand to shatter the illusion of separateness, destroy the dogma we've clung to for so long, and give us a foundational blueprint to create a new world for ourselves. Truly, it's how we can create heaven on earth. All that's required is our complete participation. One example of this is found in the work of Dr. Bruce Lipton with The Biology of Belief, which explains with profound scientific logic that our beliefs and self-identity are a product of our environment, and that as we think it, so shall we become. His work describes that if we spend our lives believing that my family had a hereditary disease, so I'll get it too, you are consciously and subconsciously programming your body with signals that will facilitate you creating that outcome. And of course, this belief and others can come from our parents and family, or the environments that we expose ourselves to. When we look at all of our childhood programming together, we find today a mashup of countless different media programs and entertainment, news stories, passed down rhetoric and ideas that we received from friends and others around us. Who we are today was shaped by the world, and while many of the lessons that we received growing up were good and valid, many others were simply long-held beliefs that have been passed down for generations, yet may not hold our highest interest at heart. These beliefs shaped our perspective of the world, and in that, how we behave and act, which leads us to create our destinies. As it would seem, many of the belief systems we hold on to disempower ourselves from being able to live our lives to the fullest. Further, many of the largest industries today are built upon previous paradigms, and so their continued growth means the limiting of this new understanding. For example, we return here to the pharmaceutical industry. If you help someone cure their depression, it's very difficult to justify charging them thousands of dollars a year for a prescription. It is far easier and much more lucrative that their depression or illness will be with them for a very long time. We must understand that the environment has played a very significant role in the creation of our collective reality, even from the moment that we were conceived and all of the experience that we've had since birth. And while birth defects do exist, Bruce's research says that 95% of people have perfectly fine DNA and can change how their genes are expressing themselves if they will it so. For some, this may be easier than it is for others, but it's very empowering research nonetheless. If we can change the signals our bodies are receiving, the thoughts and feelings we tell ourselves and receive from others, the places we live, the music we listen to, the food that we eat, the entertainment we watch, all of these aspects will play a role in reshaping our lives by influencing us from surface to very deep levels. As Bruce's work suggests, it doesn't matter what ails you. If you can address the root cause and provide yourself with a stimulus of a higher vibration, there is nothing that you cannot heal.